Story 1. In a fifth grade science test, the question was, are there any stars in the solar system? I answered, yes. The teacher marked it wrong. I went up afterward and said, what about the sun? He replied that he meant all the other stars are not in our solar system and kept it marked wrong. I've been holding on to this for 50 years. He was one of the best teachers I ever had and passed away about a week ago. That answer should have been marked right. Story 2. When I was in high school, someone tagged the school. They announced there would be a reward for anyone who reported the culprit. I was called into the office and told I was suspended for vandalism. I hadn't done it and had no idea who had. For days later, I was allowed to return to school because they found the person who did it. I only received an apology. Story 3. A few of us in primary school were saying the biggest numbers we knew. Everyone said 100,000 and 1 million, and then I said 1 trillion. They refused to believe it was a real number. Story 4. On a fourth grade math test, we had to make a shape that had only 4 sides, 1 set of parallel lines, and only 1 right angle. There were other requirements, but I can't remember them. I remember almost crying at my desk and spending 20 minutes on that one question while repeatedly telling my teacher it wasn't possible. But my teacher insisted it was. The next day we went over the answer key, and the answer had 2 right angles. Story 5. When I was in high school, I was occasionally allowed to drive my family's third car. It had a slow leak in one of the tires, so we were all supposed to check the pressure and add air when needed. I picked up a friend to go to a movie, and when we came out, one tire was completely flat. It was not the one with the leak, so I put the spare on and drove home. My parents gave me a severe scolding about being irresponsible, saying I should have checked the tires, that I would have to pay for the repair, and that I should have called roadside assistance. I took the car to get fixed and heard the same lecture again when we dropped it off. The technician called my mother and told her he had found a nail in the tire and there was no way I could have seen it coming. She refused to apologize and I still had to pay for the repair. Story 6. I was charged $1,000 for a battery and alternator change. They destroyed my starter motor in the process and rounded a bunch of my bolts. They left tools in the engine bay. I do not even have that car anymore, and I am still salty. Fuck you, Midas. Story 7. 3 months ago, I went on maternity leave. The woman hired to cover for me was paid $3 more than I am. She was to be kept on as a full-time accounting assistant after I returned, but she could not keep up with my tasks and severely corrupted several databases, which I had to correct when I returned the following month. When I asked for a raise, they offered me 50 cents after telling me how crucial I am to the company. Needless to say, I am looking for a new job. Story 8. When I was in 4th grade English class in the European Union, I used the word gross in a random sentence we had to write. The teacher argued that it was not a real word. I said that that I had seen it a few times in video games and movies, and she said that they were not a reliable source. I told her that I was going to show it in the dictionary, but she grabbed me by the arm, took me out of the classroom, and locked the door. To this day, I am still fuming about this. Then she had the nerve to be all chummy when I met her once in a supermarket. Gross. In both cases, I meant it as disgusting, and I know there are other meanings for the word. I wonder if she knows now. Story 9. 20 years ago, 3 friends came to my house, and when they left, my wallet with $80 in it was missing. One of the men felt bad and gave me $20 back. 3 years later, we were in the Burger King drive-thru and he took my wallet. I am still upset. His Facebook friend request has been pending for 2 years. Story 10. I came second in a food technology competition. I made a lovely main course, then longs to chat biscuits with lemon posset for dessert. I made that dessert because the judges had told us not to make a cake for dessert. Guess what won first place? A cake. Story 11. I was probably 5 years old when I visited my mother at the hospital after she had given birth to my brother. She was given food on a tray that she did not want, so she gave it to me. I put the tray on the table, and as I was eating, the nurse took the tray away from me and threw the food away. That may have been my first true experience of anger. I am 27 now, and I am angry as I write this. Story 12. Our wedding photographer left part of the lens cap on. So every image is shrouded by a massive black ring and we have no usable photos. Story 13. I found a bongo drum next to the trash at my old apartment, and it was a perfect time capsule of the 1990s. It had Grateful Dead stickers, a smiley face holographic sticker, a marijuana leaf sticker, and an alien. If someone had made this as a prop for a movie about the 1990s, I would have told them it was too on the nose. When I came home from work, the first thing my girlfriend's friend said was, "You're welcome." I was like, "What?" She had peeled off all the vintage stickers, and now it was just a boring drum. I'm still mad. Don't touch my stuff. Story 14. My copyright law teacher gave us a case for our pass or fail final exam. I predicted the outcome based on the evidence and solved the case, but he failed me. Later that day, I looked up the case and discovered I was right. When I confronted him, he said the grade was already posted and that even though I was right, he would not change it. I had to retake the class. Story 15. My mom put my sister's name on my birthday cake. Later that night, I walked in on my parents having sex. It was a pretty horrible way to turn 13. I am still angry. Story 16. When I was a first-year student in college, my mother gave my car to my brother, who had been in jail, without consulting me. Every time he got out, she would gather things for his fresh start. He showed up at my school, changed the battery for me, and then drove away in it. He did not tell me his intentions beforehand, so I did not realize until then. As he drove off, I called my mother and she just said, "I'll help you get a new one." He moved out of state with the car, wrecked it within weeks, and has returned to jail multiple times since. Neither of them has given me a sincere apology to this day. Story 17. My sixth grade teacher refused to believe I had no idea the student sitting behind me was copying my answers during the test. Story 18. In kindergarten, I was playing with a kid in the sandbox on a fairly drizzly day. We were making a castle and there was a puddle a few feet from us. He wanted to dig a moat around the castle and I said sure. He kind of jammed his hand in the dirt and started pulling, making a channel far too large, which he immediately realized would just destroy our castle. I said, "Quick, build a dam to stop the water." He froze, stared at me with wide eyes and his mouth agape, then ran off. I thought this was strange, but okay. I had saved the castle, so I went back to digging. Then the teacher ran up, grabbed me, and told me to go to timeout, which I protested. I said, "No, what the heck? I didn't do anything." She immediately said she knew I had said a bad word and told me not to lie, which confused me because I had not. After a few back and forths of her trying to pull me away by the arm and me rather violently resisting, it occurred to her to actually ask what happened. I explained the story. I still remember her face dropping when she realized the other kid had thought I said, "damn," instead of "damn," and had tattled on me. She suggested maybe using a different word, which I vehemently protested because that was the correct word for the situation and it was his fault for not knowing the word, until she finally gave in and explained to the kid that I had not sworn and that no one likes tattletales. I am in my 30s and on the other side of the country, and I still remember this as the moment I gazed upon my fellow man and wept, for he is stupid. Story 19. The first day of 8th grade, my best friend and the rest of the group told me they would no longer be friends with me. To this day, 20 years later, I still do not understand how or why it happened. I can only guess that it was because I was the shy nerd of the group and they were trying to fit in with the popular crowd. It was a miserable experience that left me with significant trust issues. I never expected this to get so much attention. Thank you for all the comments and the awards. Story 20. I was at a house party in college and we had to take off our shoes. Someone walked home in my leather knee-high boots and left her dirty shoes behind for me to take home. I've never gotten over it. Thanks, I guess, you shoe-stealing wrench. Story 21. Ugh. My dad and mom got divorced before I was 1, and he would randomly come around once every few years to pretend to be a dad for a week or 2, then disappear again. This is important to the story. I have always sucked at and hated math. We got a homework assignment, I think I was in 1st grade. We were working on 0 times any number. I was super excited because I understood it and knew I would get all the questions right. The whole worksheet was just questions asking what 0 times another number was. My father made me show him the worksheet when I finished and forced me to change every answer because, wow, you're stupid. Did you pay attention at all in class? I explained to the teacher when I turned it in and still got a 0. Edited to add, wow. Thank you for all the comments showing so much love and support. I kind of feel like that meme about thinking you had a fairly normal childhood until you tell somebody else and they freak out, and you realize it wasn't normal at all. Seriously, to those of you kind-hearted people and parents who have broken the cycle, you're amazing. Keep doing what you're doing. You're an awesome human being and I love you. To those who have had similar experiences, and to those who, like me, have experienced worse, I feel you. Thank you for sharing. I know life really sucks sometimes, and there are times when you just want to beat your head against the wall because it feels like Groundhog Day. Every day the same and horrible. It does get better. Just remember that the night is always the darkest just before dawn. Story 22. When I was in high school, I entered a book quiz and chose Demon Thief by Darren Shan. During the quiz, I was asked what the main characteristic of the demonata summoned by the punk at the concert was. I answered that it had 3 heads. That was marked wrong. The correct answer given was that it had a dyed mohawk. But it was the punk who summoned it who had the mohawk, not the demonata. I lost a point because the question writer either misread the book, miswrote the question, or misremembered the details. Story 23. I came second in a school trivia competition 21 years ago. I had the correct answers to 2 questions that would have sent us to the national championships, but the other 3 team members vetoed my answers. Story 24. When I got my first car, a very old one, my dad told me I would be responsible for gas and he would take care of the maintenance. After a while, my brakes started making funny noises and I told my dad. I reminded him every week for about 6 months and he always said, "Yes, I got it. I will handle it." My boyfriend at the time would not let me drive it any further because he was concerned for my safety, so he had a mechanic look at it. The mechanic told me that if I had come sooner, it would have been a €50 bill to fix it. But over time the brakes became more damaged and by then the repair would have cost over €800. When I told my dad, he said there was no way he would spend that much money on a car that had maybe €500 of value left. I ended up selling the car for scrap. That was 10 years ago, and I still bring it up with my dad sometimes. If he had done something when I first told him, it would have been so cheap and easy. Story 25. I have mentioned this before, but when I was about 8 or 9, we had a big project in school that ended with us writing a story. I spent fucking hours on it. It was going to be the best book ever. I was sure a publisher would snap it up and it would be the talk of the Scholastic Book Fair. It had to be in by the time school finished for Christmas so my teacher could mark it over the break. I stayed up until about 10 o'clock at night for a week beforehand working on it, which is the closest thing you get to an all-nighter when you are about 9. It was my magnum opus. I returned to school in January to find that she had lost it. She was accusing me of not handing it in, and because mine was the only one she could not find, she called me out in front of the class. I ended up locking myself in the toilet because I was crying so much. Worst of all, when it finally turned up, she marked it as though it had been handed in late and still only gave me a middling grade. Fuck you, Mrs. Harding. Story 26. When my old boss pulled out the 2020 calendar in late 2019 and asked everyone what days off they needed, so we could plan ahead, everyone started listing dates. I did not have any plans yet, so I did not request anything until she specifically asked me if I needed or wanted any days off. I shrugged and asked for 1 day off around my birthday because why not? She mocked me in front of everyone. She said it was just a 23rd birthday and asked why I would need it off, then rolled her eyes and treated me like an idiot for the rest of the day. Story 27. A friend in college borrowed my truck while I flew home for a month, about 1,500 miles away. He agreed not to cross state lines, only to drive it to work and back, and that if I found out otherwise it would be a big deal. I wasn't home a week when I got a call from our group. He had taken the truck to Connecticut, driven drunk, become road rageful at another driver, and lightly hit the rear of a car. He then backed into his buddy's dad's brand new Lexus, causing about $3,000 in damage. I flew home the next day. When I confronted him, he basically said, "I don't have the money. It's your problem. My mother, the insurance company, and the Lexus owner's father were all pressuring me to fix it. The Lexus owner's father said he would file a police report if I didn't pay. My mother was furious. She had warned me repeatedly not to let anyone drive my truck. I was 19 at the time. She later treated it as a life lesson. I called my insurance company before I flew home and told them what had happened. Truthfully, I called the friend and told him that if my truck wasn't in front of my apartment, I would report it stolen. The call lasted about 15 minutes and I spent most of it screaming. I experienced what felt like a rage blackout. When I landed, the truck was there and he admitted he couldn't pay. One friend who picked me up held me back. The next day he had vanished, taking his belongings and some of mine. A few days later, the insurance agent asked for the full story again. I gave them the guy's name and address and never heard further. I did not get a bill and my rates did not go up. The friend whose dad owned the Lexus contacted me. I told him the insurance company already knew and to go after the person who took the truck. I gave him the friend's information and heard nothing more. The guy crossed state lines again. He later tried to contact me. I told him to never contact me again. The roommate who defended him eventually cut him off when other friends reported the friend's drinking and hit-and-run behavior with my truck. He later sided with me and we reconciled. Story 28. In elementary school, there was a pencil machine in the front lobby where you could get pencils for 25 cents. There were also special pencils that had stars on them. If you got one of these special pencils, you could take it to the office and receive a prize. One day, I decided to get a pencil. I put in my quarter and the machine dispensed 2 pencils, one of which was a special pencil. I told the receptionist that the machine had given me 2 pencils and one was special. She said the machine should not do that, took the special pencil and did not give me a prize. This happened about 20 years ago and I am still upset. Answers to common questions. The prizes were things like fancy erasers that did not actually erase anything, fun-sized candy bars, and similar items. Think 5 to 10 tickets at Chuck E. Cheese. This happened in Michigan in 2nd or 3rd grade. The main lesson I learned was to withhold irrelevant information or lie if I thought the truth might negatively affect me. Story 29. I missed recognition at my school's major academic assembly for what were arguably the most important results of my schooling in my state in Australia, because the teacher I had sent my results to did not pass on the news. It has been years, and it still fills me with exasperation. Story 30. A friend told me that they only hang out with me when all of their other options run dry. Story 31. My sister got a brand new car for her 16th birthday. I got $20. Story 32. When my son was in Cub Scouts and it was our first Pinewood Derby, he worked hard on his car. For a 7-year-old, it was decent. When we showed up, not a single child had built a car. It was mostly a father's competition. My son finished last and I felt bad because his friends said their fathers had built their cars. For the next 4 years, my son chose the design and color scheme and I built the cars while at work. We went on a 4-year winning streak in the local, district, and regional derbies. The looks of anguish on those fathers' faces were worth it. Story 33. Some friends from work planned a get-together at a local chain restaurant for my birthday. One of my coworkers found out and decided it should also celebrate her birthday because it was the day before mine. I was already annoyed, but whatever. The night of the dinner, a friend bought us both slices of cheesecake. They were presented with candles and everyone sang happy birthday. At the end, she blew out her candle and then mine and laughed about it. It was my candle. You were barely invited. I've never forgotten it. Story 34. When I was 10, I was a goody two-shoes nerd seated in the back of the bus next to the class troublemaker because we had assigned seats and he arranged it. He took apart a science fair project that had been kept back there and threw a piece out the window. When someone tattled on him, he blamed me. Because the teacher could not prove who was responsible, both of us were punished even though 15 classmates came to my defense. All I got was 1 study hall. Schools are unfair in their discipline. Students today are bullied relentlessly because they know that standing up for themselves can lead to suspension. Story 35. My parents gave my mother's coworker, who is my age, a down payment for her first home a couple of years ago because my mother had grown fond of her. The The same year I needed emergency dental surgery that cost $5,000. I am a single income earner living paycheck to paycheck and have never asked for money. I have kept a steady job since I was 15. I moved out on my own at 19. They did not help me and I had nowhere to turn, so I took poor financial advice and put the surgery on a credit card. Took me 4 years to pay it off. I am still resentful. Edit. Thank you for the support. I do not begrudge my parents for not giving me money. I understand they wanted me to be on my feet and to make a major financial decision on my own. I am resentful about the way it played out when they could have handled the situation while I felt alone and out of control. What they do with their money is not my business. I felt as if I had been given the cold shoulder. Story 36. I was in 3rd grade. I told a joke that made the popular kid laugh really hard, but only he heard it. That made me feel great. Then he repeated the joke louder and the entire class and the teacher laughed. A lot of people asked what the joke was. The teacher was talking about a bunch of Caesars like Caesar Augustus and Julius Caesar. I said, and Caesar salad. Okay, it was lame, but I was proud of myself for coming up with it. My delivery was perfect. The popular kid said, "Oh, Caesar salad." And then everyone started laughing. It is funny to think that I was so distraught in 3rd grade. Story 37. I worked at McDonald's in high school. I trained about 6 people who started after me but was never promoted to crew trainer for the 15 cents per hour raise. I would not be upset if they had not promoted 2 people I trained to crew trainer, and one of them later to manager. Story 38. My managers would not let me take a weekend off for my honeymoon because they said it was Small Business Saturday and I needed to be there. I gave them more than a month's notice, and the event lasted only an hour. Thank goodness I no longer work there. Story 39. A couple of years ago, my brother ate the remainder of my birthday cake behind my back. After the celebrations, I had put what was left in the freezer to enjoy later as a treat, since birthday cake is a novelty. He demolished every last bit of it. This was not just a small slice. At least half the cake remained until he got his hands on it. I was absolutely furious. Story 40. In 9th grade, we studied the American Revolution in history class. I am not American, but it was in the curriculum. At one point, my teacher said, "And so today the United States flag has 54 stars, 1 for each state." I remember looking up from my desk and loudly saying, "No, there are 50 stars and 50 states." The teacher and I argued for a couple of minutes, and I offered, in front of everyone, to search for a picture of the flag and count the stars myself. The teacher refused and insisted she was right, saying that was the end of it. I got up and left the class. That was 10 years ago, and I am still upset that a teacher could be that daft. Story 41. My family had a PlayStation 1 when I was little, and we had many games, some of which are quite expensive now. At some point, the PlayStation 1 broke, and my mother gave away all the games because there was no point in keeping them if you could not play them. The joke was on her. I bought a used PlayStation 1 about 2 years ago, and now I have to repurchase all the games we had. Story 42. Years ago, a coworker said he could guess the age of any girl in line. I pointed to the girl closest to us, who was a tween, and asked his guess. He then called me a pedophile for asking him to guess the age of a girl. This was at an amusement park where some employees were assigned to estimate ages, weights, and heights. Story 43. When I was young, I had a baby blanket that I was deeply attached to. I was about 8, and a large hole had formed in it, so I gave it to my stepmother to sew it. She threw it away instead. It was a baby Mickey Mouse blanket, a true gem of my era and nearly the only thing I had left from my very difficult childhood. I am still upset 20 years later. Story 44. In 3rd grade, my teacher told the class to draw what we would want to be on the Delaware quarter because the new state-specific quarters were coming out. I drew a cowboy on a horse. She said I was a dummy because she did not know what a cowboy had to do with the state of Delaware. Fuck you, Mrs. Ryan. Story 45. I had to get photos printed for a university project, so I went to a print shop. I declined the digital versatile disc with my photos, but they charged me £2 and discarded my receipt before I could check it. When I went to submit my project, we were told to do a peer review. No one in my group had done the project and they did not care. I had wasted all that time and effort, and I am still upset. Story 46. A child in my child's class told their teacher that their mother was taking them out of school for their birthday, so they would be absent that day. The teacher reprimanded the child and said that if they were not present the following day, there would be serious consequences. The child was upset and decided to go into school. They had not written down the homework properly and completed 3 different pages of work, but it was the wrong assignment. The teacher locked the child in the classroom over lunch on their birthday. Story 47. I spelled mayonnaise correctly in my 4th grade class spelling bee, but the teacher claimed I had not and dismissed me. I had won in 3rd grade and went on to win in 5th and 6th grade. That unfair disqualification ruined what would have been a 4-year streak. Sorry that so many of you have also experienced spelling bee injustice. Story 48. They canceled my name as Earl after assuring the writers it was safe to end season 4 on a cliffhanger because they planned to make several more. I am still very upset that Flash Forward and Utopia were canceled. It seems like half of the shows I become invested in are canceled halfway through. Story 49. I did not know what the word facilities meant. The teacher asked me to read it from the board and I pronounced it incorrectly. She looked horrified and mocked me. Who has ever heard of facilities? She kept mocking me for the rest of the lesson and the other kids joined in. Having an adult laugh in my face was odd and scary. When I got home, I was very upset. The next day, I did not want to go to school, but my parents made me. All day, she brought the joke up again and again with the word facetious on the board. Definitely not facilities, everyone. Followed by big laughs. I decided I would not go to school. When I told my parents, my mother, who can be intense, went ballistic. The next day, the teacher did not apologize but spent the day saying there would be no joking in case someone who cannot take a joke gets offended. This led to about a year of bullying. I was 9. She is dead now. I hope hell has all the facilities she desires. Story 50. My mum ate a piece of candy I had saved for after school. It happened 20 years ago. Story 51. I was told I was too good to promote at my old job. After learning many different skills, taking countless extra shifts, and handling tasks that were not in my job description, the company decided it was more cost-effective to keep me on the ground floor rather than hire multiple people to replace me. The promotion instead went to a person whose main skill was brown-nosing. I am more angry at myself for not valuing networking and for over-relying on work ethic. Story 52. My mom decided that she did not want Christmas presents one year and made sure to tell us, my 2 brothers and me. I suggested that we donate what we would have spent to charity in her name. She said she was fine with that, so I did. I sent her a card and information about the charities I donated to so she could see that her decision helped some good organizations. My mom was furious. She said, "Why didn't you just send me a gift card if you were not going to buy me anything? You ruined Christmas." I love my mom. By that point, we had had only one really nasty fight several years earlier. She was fine during my childhood and for most of my adulthood, except for a suicide attempt for which I had to call an ambulance from across the country. A long story. I am accustomed to buying my mom thoughtful presents. When she accused me of ruining Christmas, I was distraught. I sent her a screenshot of the conversation we had and circled where she had said she was fine with my decision to donate in her name. She responded that she did not remember and that she had deleted those messages. I lost my temper, told her it was her fault for raising me to do as I was told, and said that next time she should not say anything if she was going to change her mind and not tell us. We did not speak for 3 months. This was 2.5 years ago, and I have not gotten over it. Story 53. When I was in 7th grade, a student in 8th grade was being annoying on the bus and teasing me as we were about to ride home after school. I shot an elastic band at him and it hit him somewhere below the waist. He ran off the bus holding his eye and found the vice principal, who then promptly suspended me from the bus for the trip home and the next day. I had to wait at school while they called my mother, who had to arrange for my aunt to pick me up on short notice. My mother also had to be more than an hour late for work the next morning so she could drop me off at school. I remember my mother giving the vice principal an earful about the bus suspension. We went to a county school, so most students, including us, relied on the bus service and most parents worked in the city 30 minutes in the other direction. It was easily the most disruptive punishment for a working parent. Screw that kid and the vice principal. Story 54. I was doing an exercise in 5th grade science with a drawing of a forest that showed many items. We had to mark which were biotic and which were abiotic, meaning living and non-living. That day we had a substitute teacher, and she told me I was wrong to mark fire as non-living because it needs oxygen to survive. Story 55. I'm 35 now. When I was 14 or 15, my mom stormed into my room one evening and accused me of smashing a glass and getting rid of the evidence. It was one of those retro Coke glasses. I swore I didn't break any glass. And if I did, why would I hide such a small accident? But my mom didn't believe me. She was so mad and accused me of lying. She wouldn't even say why I was her prime suspect. Somehow it just had to be me. Anyway, I got into trouble for it even without any evidence. Sometime later, it turned out no glass was actually smashed. My mom thought the glasses she bought came in sets of 4. But our neighbor bought the same set and there were actually 3 glasses in it. My mom acknowledged it but never apologized for screaming at me or accusing me without reason. She never mentioned it again, and I'm still mad about it. Note, just to address a couple of things since this comment got more attention than it deserves. To be honest, my mom is not a narcissist. She can be petty sometimes and she does not like being wrong. She's a great mom. She had me very young and I don't think she was mature enough to raise kids back then. But she did her best and I love her. Also, I'm not angry at her anymore. I'm a grown adult and most of the time I act like one. It's just one of those memories that makes me feel a bit salty whenever it pops into my head. I think most people can relate. Moral of the story: acknowledge your mistakes to your children and to people in general. Story 56. In middle school, we had an assignment to list homophones. One of my examples was the words whether and weather. When I got the assignment back, my teacher marked it incorrect. I pointed it out, assuming she had made a mistake, but she said they were not pronounced the same. When I asked how they differed, she pronounced whether in an exaggerated way, like Stewie Griffin saying Cool Whip. I'm still annoyed about that more than 20 years later. Story 57. My brother repeatedly stole money from me. He first did so when I was 13. I was saving for concert tickets and kept the money in a cookie tin at the foot of my bed. By July, I had about $60, but one day when I went to add a $5 bill, all the large bills were gone. He was the only one who knew where the tin was, and he denied it when I confronted him. My mother paid me back, but the incident made me very cautious around him. Over the years, he routinely raided my change jar. I kept the silver coins separate from the pennies, and I had a lot of quarters because I used a laundromat to wash comforters. He would go in and take only the quarters. I have not voluntarily given him money in years. Story 58. When I was about 8, my teacher repeatedly humiliated me in front of the class and made fun of me for crying. He put a bucket under my head and said, "If you keep crying, you can almost fill the bucket," while laughing loudly. I just want to find this senile asshole and break his nose. It was the first humiliation in a long series. Story 59. When I was 21, I was deeply self-conscious about my baldness, so I wore a hat everywhere. A friend thought I was worrying for nothing and set me up on a date with a wonderful woman. Everything went well at first, but when I took off my hat, she shrieked and ran to the bathroom. That was the end of it. Story 60. I have no idea where the remaining 2/3 of my wedding cake went after the venue's catering staff cut and served it. Story 61. In middle school, I took a true or false test. One question mentioned the Atlantic Ocean and the West Coast. I am in the United States. The question included other facts that were true about the Atlantic, but since the Atlantic is on the East Coast, I marked it false. It was marked wrong, and when I protested, the teacher said, "Obviously, I meant East Coast." It was only 1 point and did not affect my grade, but my 13-year-old, normally quiet, teacher's pet self was ready to riot. I honestly wish she had. Edit. 13-year-old me finally feels somewhat vindicated for the injustice. Thank you all for commiserating with me. Story 62. Being accused of stealing a teacher's wallet when I was in high school was traumatic. I was living in a dormitory, and the residential advisors allowed the teacher to confront me just after I had stepped out of the shower while I was wearing only a towel. He threatened to call the police and said that even if I had not stolen it, he knew who had, which was not true. The school then claimed they had video footage of me at the local convenience store at an automated teller machine. I was relieved because I knew I had not been there and thought the footage would clear my name. When I asked to see it, they said the video cassette had broken. They also said someone had anonymously called the principal at night and given him my name. All these scare tactics used on a 14-year-old living away from home still do not sit well with me more than 20 years later. Story 63. My parents objected to my sister marrying the man who is now her husband. They treated her poorly and came to her wedding in a sour mood. They never apologized. My sister and her husband have been married for 8 years. Parents. If your adult daughter wants to do something you disagree with, tell her you think it is a mistake. Once she has made her decision, your job is to support her, not to keep harping on her and making her hate you. Story 64. I was fired from my dream job the day I returned from paternity leave. I had prepared a 10-page presentation covering everything I had been working on before I left. Story 65. In first grade, some unknown kid dropped their chicken sandwich on the floor, and the teacher thought it was me even though I had already finished mine. She grilled me so hard and questioned the way I told the story that I finally took the blame for whoever dropped it because I wanted it to be over. That was 24 years ago, and my blood still boils. Story 66. In second grade, a teacher insisted that I was spelling my little sister's name incorrectly. She has a very common name with an uncommon spelling, at least in the United States, and because this teacher had never seen it before, she was sure I did not know my own sister's name. Story 67. My dad took $5 I had hidden when I was 6 years old. I am 35 and still angry that he never returned it when I confronted him about it. Story 68. 8 years ago, 2 of my friends and I banded together to create a company. We lived in a building owned by one friend's father. We paid rent, but the son did not. We were negotiating an investment from the father to start the company. He lowered our rent while we poured ourselves into creating the business. When his lawyer presented the shareholder agreement, it essentially put me and my other friend into indentured servitude. Our friend had been colluding with his father all along. We refused. We were evicted, and the son and his father copied our research and started the company. They sold it this year. I was cordial with him because we have mutual friends, but I still hate him. If this reaches him, he will definitely see it and know it is me. Story 69. Freshman year of high school, some boys stole my diary out of my backpack, photocopied it, and sold the photocopies around my high school. They confessed in the superintendent's office. I was the one who got suspended. My parents said they would press charges. Because the school did not punish the students, and apparently a confession, evidence, and testimony from other students was not enough in the face of a bribe from a wealthy family, my parents did not press charges against the kids. They grounded me instead because I used a swear word when talking about how much I hated being bullied at school and that I wanted to kill myself. Now, almost 20 years later, I am in my 12th year of therapy, coming to terms with how much the adults in my life failed me when I was a kid and how much it affected me. At least now I have a couple of good friends and an awesome boyfriend supporting me through my second round of college. I am going to be a teacher, better than the teachers I had. Thank you for all the well wishes. I am moving forward toward a good life. I aim to be the kind of person who stands up for kids like me and helps them get justice. If not that, then I will help them cope with life. I am doing all right. Thank you to whoever sent the helpline my way. I am in therapy and I do have a good support network. It is much appreciated to know some people out there are truly decent and will take the time to help a fellow human being. Story 70. When I was about 10, there was a competition at our school and a television crew was there too. Basically, whoever won the race won the prize. I did not care about the crew. I just wanted to run and win. I was a pretty good athlete, and when they came to our class, they called out the girls. I stood up, excited to participate in another race, but they said no, not you. We only want really fair girls. I was too young to understand why I was not selected. The boys in class kept cracking jokes until I started laughing. I was not crying, just confused and angry. You know what? Fuck them. I would have won if I had participated. The physical education teacher knew it, which is why her daughter, whose complexion was like mine, competed. So to hell with the crew and the teacher. Story 71. When I was really young, maybe 6 or 7 years old, I had a few dollar bills from the tooth fairy. I looked for loose change between the couch cushions every so often. I ended up saving around $20 and hid it under my bed. My cousin, who was much older, tended to steal. He found the money and told my grandmother and my mother. They were amazed and kept asking where it came from and why $1 of change was in individual plastic sandwich bags. I told them I was the one who had saved it. They laughed at me, and my cousin claimed it was his and said they could have it. They spent it on lottery tickets. More than 25 years later, I am still angry about it. Story 72. I had an apartment with 3 roommates. There was a dishwasher in the kitchen, so I put my dirty dishes in it. Because I had not filled it, I did not run it. A few hours later, I came back and found my dirty dishes on the counter and a note on the dishwasher that read, "The dishwasher is for clean dishes only." It has been about 5 years since I left those asshole roommates, but it still makes me angry to this day. What the fuck do you think a dishwasher is for, Kieran, you fucking cunt? Story 73. I will always be upset about the film adaptation of Aragon. Story 74. The question in 2nd grade math was, Joe read 2/5 of his book and Sue read 1/4 of her book. Who read more pages? The response that it depends on how big their books are is absolutely correct and should not have been marked wrong. You know it, Mrs. K. I am sorry, Mrs. K. You do not deserve all this Reddit hate. Story 75. Back in grade school, I had 2 close friends named Juan and Nick. Here is a picture of us at the circus that I love, with me in front, then Juan, then Nick. The 3 of us bonded over our shared nerdy interests: reading, Star Wars, and The Simpsons. We also enjoyed drawing. I don't remember exactly how it started, but we ended up making a notebook that we passed back and forth. It was a comic about a guy named Tom and his cat. We took turns doing a strip of a few panels and then handing it over. Here is a quick drawing I did of Tom on my phone, so you can get an idea of what he looked like. The comic was about Tom's everyday life and was extremely mundane. It was things like Tom deciding on a shirt or Tom dropping the cat food on the floor. It was really dumb, but we found it hilarious because we were weird kids. One day our teacher caught us with the notebook and confiscated it. She never said a word about it, but I bet when she looked through it she thought it was the strangest thing, especially since we were laughing hysterically when she took it. We never got the notebook back because apparently she lost it. 23 years later, I'm still mad because I would love to see the dumb comics we made. Story 76. All of this ended last year. A boy and a girl used to bully me so badly that I would cry myself to sleep or consider not going to school. It got to the point that the girl threatened me and said she was going to wait outside school to beat me up. But everyone, including teachers, adored them and told me I was being childish, saying the girl has a bad past. And they both do, as if that was an excuse. They also praised her for having an attitude and mistook her rudeness for being real and brave. I went through messed up things too, most of which made my school counselors cry, but I did not bully people just because they were quiet and did not talk much. Edit. Thank you for the support. It honestly made me tear up. You are all fucking amazing. Story 77. My school spelled my name wrong in our yearbook and on the yard sign they gave us. Keep in mind, we get 1 yearbook for 4 years. Felt like a slap in the face. Story 78. During Avengers Endgame, the woman next to me kept talking to the screen. During Iron Man's final line to Thanos, she said, Iron Man, during the dramatic pause as he said, I am Iron Man, and totally ruined the moment. Edit. Wow, this got more attention than I thought. Story 79. They discontinued maple and brown sugar frosted mini wheats. It was my favorite cereal and now it's gone. Story 80. Freaking Bitcoin. A buddy of mine brought it up years ago when it was just starting out. I bought a new gaming personal computer, and he suggested I start mining. I laughed it off and told him good luck. Nerd. He messaged me years later when it was at $15,000 per coin and asked how my portfolio was doing. Story 81. My dad got married for the third time on my birthday. When I asked him why he chose that day, he said, I was off. Story 82. For my wedding cake, we had a simple, light pink, two-tier cake decorated with a giant blue sugar peony. I later discovered that the catering staff thought I did not want the peony and ate it. I left a furious review. Story 83. I had to drop out of my last placement in my teacher training. My first mentor accused me of being a potential sex offender and implied I was an utterly hopeless, irredeemable teacher who would never succeed. I never regained momentum and was too far behind to pass the course. I regret not taking legal action against my university for providing no support. Joke's on her. I have worked in education in other ways for almost 10 years, and I am moving to Japan to teach English once the borders reopen. Story 84. I was 16 when my parents decided I needed my first real job. They took me to a fancy restaurant down the hill to see if they were hiring. They said they needed a dishwasher and said I could start on Thanksgiving Day. That really upset me because I have a large Irish Catholic family, and Thanksgiving is a big deal. Plus, I love the food. I took the job. I showed up and worked an 8-hour shift, working very hard washing dishes. I kept up with the heavy load since they were doing a giant Thanksgiving banquet. At the end of the night, the manager let us make a plate from the leftovers. Then she brought me into her office, handed me an envelope with $50, and said she would call me if they ever needed me again. I was furious, and I still am. I gave up my favorite family holiday to work for $50 and the promise that they would call me. Story 85. 7th grade English class. We had a group project and each of us had assigned portions. One girl insisted she was doing her part and would bring it on the due date. When the due date came, she was not there. The teacher said she was on vacation according to her notes. She knew she would not be there, which made me furious, and the teacher did not seem to care. At least I learned fairly early not to trust other people in group projects. Note, to explain why I was still upset, this happened 18 years ago. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.